Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. So I've got a bit of, I guess, bad and good news. It's time to talk about the action cam feature again. It's been added to the game, it's being removed, and it's going to be added again some point after that. This whole story starts with people reporting that they felt sick, and that their in-game camera was behaving strangely. It then eventually got out that the action camera had been turned on for these people, and when turned on fully, with the far more nauseous head bob and auto follow options active, which was a bit of a problem. And then it turned out that somehow this thing was turning itself on, which is a bit odd. Now, this is a feature that itself was essentially an experiment, and that the developers left in because it was a harmless feature that provided people with a little bit of fun. Well, if a bug turns it on by itself, then we start getting into problem territory, because previously the only way to have this active was to use the console command or have an add-on do it for you. So anyone who had turned it on would therefore know how to turn it off. Now, if someone with no prior knowledge logs in and has found that this has turned itself on, they'll have absolutely no idea what the hell is going on or what they can do to stop it. As I said, the action cam was activating with its full set of features turned on. Now, many of these were features that I personally disabled because I kind of saw them as being a little bit nauseous and also just a bit too flashy. Like WoW was maybe, like this camera, it wasn't trying to be similar to a Dragon Age camera, it was trying to be more similar to the camera from God of War or something. Now you'll notice that in my videos, I use the action cam with its most basic settings. This is a far more static and sort of simplistic implementation of that camera. It just changes the location and some behavior. For me, it meant the game world was framed in a more interesting manner, but really not that much else. It did mean that playing some of the more flashy classes was a bit more fun, and I did find it to be more immersive, but overall the way that I played World of Warcraft was not tremendously altered. The full version of this camera, though, has settings like the auto-follow target thing, which are a bit too much even for myself. As someone who I eat up first-person shooters and really big monitors, I love high-intensity VR games, I don't get motion sick. I do get car sick, but anyway, I don't get motion sick, and these were all sort of settings that added in camera motion that the player didn't really directly control in a one-to-one fashion. So normally, you move your mouse a bit, and then the camera will move a bit in a way that is, directly tied to how you've moved your mouse. So you expect the movement when it's coming. Well, when you have features like the auto-follow, which are kind of the camera moving itself a little bit, it's very, very important to get that right, and there is sufficient evidence to suggest that the WoW team were not just there yet. So a viewer of the channel, the small 001, I'm going to use his Reddit name because I don't think it's the best idea to give out his Twitter name because that seems to be his actual name, but anyway, he made a great post on Reddit. I'll link it down in the description thing, and basically he theorized some sort of FOV rendering issues and then synchronization issues between the refresh rate of the camera and the renderer. Well, what does all this mean? Okay, so generally in games you have your actual game logic running a fixed number of times per second, and then the graphics side of things running either synced to the refresh rate of your user's monitor or an uncapped frame rate. Essentially, you don't want a situation where, when I say logic of the game, I'm more referring to physics, but you don't want a situation where your physics is tied to the frame rate of your game. That causes a lot of problems. So when dealing with the camera in your game, this stuff is really important because a badly implemented camera will really mess stuff up. Now, as far as specific cameras go, I do have a tiny bit of semi-relevant experience from testing that I was doing on the camera of the game that we're developing, and then the 3D rendering project that I did in my third year of university. So I'm going to start off with the Unity thing, and basically in Unity you've got a few different types of update, and I'm more just talking about this to give you an example of how some of this stuff works behind the scenes. So there's your regular update loop. This is, just imagine that this is this is stuff that is executed once every frame. So every time your game delivers a frame, whatever you've put in your update, that will run. Then there is fixed update. Now this is a special kind of update that isn't tied to the frame rate of your game. It's going to call itself a regular number of times per second, and that's why you'd always put your physics in fixed update, because if you're doing physics calculations, you want to make sure you're doing them the same amount of times every second. The time between fixed updates is always the same, and that just means that your physics and all that stuff will be working lovely and correctly no matter what frame rate the player is actually at. And then you've got late update. This is called once every frame after the main update has happened, and this is where you would normally position your camera. This means that the camera works out where it's going to be looking after all the other bits of your game know where they are. You can get some really strange behavior if you do that stuff wrong, and I'm not saying that Blizzard are doing that wrong, but it could be the case, and this is my hypothesis, that Blizzard are implementing the features which move the camera for you, i.e. the head bob and the autofollow, in a way that doesn't actually follow this best practice in a way that might be leading to some problems with the motion that is actually produced. So basically, I think the normal camera and the action camera with its basic setting are all working fine. I think they're working grand. But as soon as you add in the autofollow, whatever code they are using to work out how the autofollow moves the camera might not actually be executing in the way that you normally would be sort of executing code relating to how your camera positions itself. So the author of the Dynamic Cam add-on has actually suggested that this is a part of the issue, and from what I know, which again is the game stuff that I've done and a little bit of a rendering sort of engineering education, like that does support that could be the kind of issue that we're running into with the action cam. But like I've only ever implemented the most basic of cameras myself, like from scratch, other than the Unity one, which it kind of does itself. It's not that much work. So I can't give you a massive insight, but that's roughly what I think of how this stuff is a problem. There are some stuff to do with field of view, how that stuff's updating, and some depth issues, which I can't really speak to because it's not stuff I know much about, but that could be another thing which is in the mix, which is causing some issues with how this action cam is working that are making some people feel ill when they're using it. So anyway, I definitely don't know 100%, but that seems like a pretty plausible sort of cause for this stuff, and at the very least I hope you found this interlude a bit interesting. These issues for the implementation of the action cam are only an issue if the action cam is turned on. The problem at hand is that it's turning itself on, so rather than fix this issue of the camera thing, the console variable turning itself on, Blizzard are just removing the entire thing, which certainly does stop the problem, but it is at the loss of functionality which some people liked, and actually the number of people that seem to like that honestly does surprise me. I don't have anything scientific at all, but anecdotally between people I know in-game, IRL friends, stuff like that, it seems to have been a decent hit. Anyway, I would just prefer that they applied a hotfix that would stop it from automatically turning on. Now, the reason why I say that's because I don't imagine that it's a crazy, complex thing. It's just a variable which is being turned on incorrectly somewhere in their code, depending on, I'm assuming some sort of rare edge case, because it's clearly not something that's happening to everyone. And this setting of a console variable to turn this on is really much in the same way that you yourself will be setting console variables all the time, anytime you use the in-game settings, like under the interface options as an example. So I'm confused as to why they don't solve this problem and leave the functionality in for those who want it, so that people can have fun from the system while Blizzard learn from how it's being used in a live environment so they can make their final implementation even better. I guess a more hacky solution would just be to set the CVAR to false every time the player logs in or reloads. That would be a bit messy, but I guess it would work. It would be more work for people who want the camera, but I think that's a good thing if it means that players who didn't ask for the camera don't have it just turn itself on. Now, of course, none of this is a knock to the engineering people at Blizzard. Like, often the way a lot of this stuff works is you throw together a hacky prototype of a feature super quickly so we can validate whether it's worth committing more resources to it. And the great news is that it seems like the WoW team think that this is something that's worthy of that. Associate Game Director Ian Hazzikostas tweeted back at me after I linked a Reddit post about the removal of the action cam, and he said that it would be back. So overall, I think they could handle the removal a little bit better. I'm personally disappointed that it seemingly won't be in for the initial leveling of Legion, but I am happy to see that Blizzard are going to be further working on the project. Though I am a tad worried that it will end up in some sort of bizarre development hell and never appear, but that's just speculation that we can't really substantiate that well. Anyway, that's it for this video. I suppose this is only the secondary camera drama that's going on. There's still quite a lot of discussion and debate over the issues surrounding the, like how far you can zoom the camera out, but I've already said my piece on that, and I'm not interested in, doing like WoW camera exposed videos twice a week or some shit like that. But anyway, everyone, that's it. Thank you for watching the video. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments, and also let me know if this action cam was turning itself on randomly for you. It'd be really cool just to hear thoughts of people who've been affected by it. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.